all for coming. Wait for the tech person to get caught up with us here.
A little pause. Perfect. I appreciate that.
All right, we'll get started. Thank you all for coming. This is put on by the Victor Historic Advisory Committee, and we have one more talk coming up that'll be on December 10th, and it's Norma Wiesen from Victor, who is going to be talking about women in sports and the impact of Title IX. And Norma was going through it, I think, just before I was here, and was sort of on both sides, I think, of that. She was probably playing sports just before Title IX came in, and should be an interesting talk. Today we have another Victor graduate, Tim Munn. Tim's written a number of books especially about sports and baseball in this area, and has coached in Victor and is a longtime coach in Red Jacket. Really knows sporting in this part of New York, and so we're very happy to have him here. So, Tim, thank you very much for coming.
Mr. Kelly's my old track coach, by the way. First of all, I want to thank you for coming out today, and if any of you are veterans, thank you for your service. I know a big Veterans Day weekend, and on Facebook I saw a lot of family names that were involved, and of course the Greatest Generation, which I know some of your fathers were a part of, and my dad as well, so I appreciate that. I know also the World Series was a couple weeks back. I'm a Yankee man, so I didn't get to watch too much of it. I'm pretty frustrated with that, but time goes on. Second year, I have 6 books. I told my mother, I said I'm going to raffle off if you get a chance to fill in that. I know we could do it between the break or something, and she'll call it the numbers, and you can grab a book there. Yeah, my mom's still good for something here. She's telling me about cleaning all my all my uniforms and scrubbing those, and no, she's been a real godsend over the years. Yeah, she's my personal gardener at home. So yeah, she's kept herself fit as a fiddle. By the way, maybe she should have been a phys ed instructor like I was for over 33 years, but she has these really neat push-ups off the kitchen counter, doing can of soup curls, stuff like that. She keeps busy with it. So anyways, yeah, today I want to keep going on this forever because Lord knows some of my Irish ancestry, which my buddy Dave Connon knows all about. Sometimes it's hard to get us to stop talking, I think. But anyways, I'm doing a quick hitter on Ontario County baseball history. I hope you bear with me. This actually came off my Chromebook with Adobe Express. Normally, I've done some other programs for Smith Opera House and one up in Rochester when they do the select 5 places in New York State selected for historical preservation. I normally have a professional videographer, cinematographer named Jimmy Kern, who's terrific. The problem with James, he's been in Ireland for a month. So I had to use my own. And my wife is a retired computer teacher, and she knows that the last thing I had in high school and college was a typewriter, and it's one finger at a time. So my technology skills aren't like Susie's over here. so like that. But anyways, give you a little lead in here. By the way, when you're done, take a look at it. But I'm going to encourage somebody, especially you grandparents. I think after we're done here, and I got a friend of mine, Randall, is an art teacher for many years across the hall from me. We've done numerous of shows all over Rochester area and Ontario County and so forth. He has the Hannes baseball card there. Of course, he cut out the face, so you can lift it up, have somebody take a selfie, and can send it to your grandkids. See, you're worth about $7.5 million. There you go, So anyways, the first thing I'm going to set up here is Ontario County baseball history. And I was just telling Mr. Kelly, you don't realize that the epicenter of baseball actually came in through New York City. And what helped that was that the railroad just, word of mouth, the railroad just spread the word, and suddenly it just evolved. And being at baseball, 1846, and by the time upstate New York, up here in the Victor area, probably post-Civil War, the game really grew. And you started to see, and I'll be honest with you, there's one, when we get to the Victor one, I'm kind of jumping ahead here on the second film, Victor. It's tough when you go through newspaper articles. The first article I found, because the heading today is 1875 to present, that was the earliest article, but when they talked about it, they actually talked about reorganizing the baseball team. So if anybody has some time on their hands, you want to go to meet with Dr. Pierce or somebody, you want to dig through some, I'm sure there's some articles predating 1875 that'd be kind of cool to find. Anyways, so the first one, I'm going to let Susie here let it roll. It's pretty self-explanatory. I hope you can hear my voice on it. I did it at home. I had to keep the dog outdoors for a while and tell my son not to say anything. And so it's a little home version of a documentary film. So, Sue, I'm ready, and you're ready.
Ontario County baseball history.
Perfect.
The Brooklyn Atlantics, champions of America in 1865, played the Empire Drill Company of Shortsville, New York. Sam Jackson, town of Manchester, Clifton Springs, played for the Boston Red Stockings in 1871. Candidate's Jim McCauley, a bare-handed catcher, played for the Chicago Maroons in 1880. 1902, Phelps, New York, all-women's baseball team. No top row as a brother to one of the players. He was the catcher because it was deemed unladylike to squat. This is John Francis Dwyer, Geneva, New York, perhaps Ontario County's greatest professional baseball player. Accomplishments: won 176 games as a pitcher, managed the Detroit Tigers, New York Giants pitching coach, and Major League umpire. Dwyer's prized pupil is Christy Matheson, who, as a pitcher, won 383 games. In the winter of 1910, Christy Matheson's indoor baseball team took on the Geneva Hydrant Hose team at the Geneva Armory and lost. Dwyer umpired Cy Young's perfect game on May 5, 1904. What famous actor coined the phrase, "A hot dog at a ballpark is better than a steak at the Ritz"? Answer: Humphrey Bogart. A summer resident at the south end of Canandaigua Lake, Humphrey Bogart's nanny took him to his first baseball game at the age of 5 via steamboat. Meet Patsy Doherty, a Canada State League player in 1898. He played for Boston in the very first World Series, 1903, and became the first player in history to hit 2 home runs in a World Series. Meet Tommy Leach, Geneva State League player. He played Major League ball for Pittsburgh from 1898 to 1918. To this day, he owns a National League record. Most inside the park home runs, 49. Left is the great Hannes Wagner. He was moved to shortstop because Tommy Leach was better at the hot corner, also known as third base. At a recent auction, the Hannes Wagner card went for $7.25 million. Let me introduce Canada's Roy Wilkinson. His father was a gardener for Sonnenberg. He overcame polio and pitched 20 years professionally. In 1919, he joined the Chicago White Sox. He'd pitched in the most infamous World Series known as the Black Sox scandal. After the season, he pitched in the county championship and lost to Manchester 7-4. Roy Wilkinson was a teammate of the famous Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was later banned from baseball for the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Joe Gleason, World War I hero from Phelps, New York, made his professional pitching debut with Washington on September 11th, 1920. Gleason's teammate, the great Walter Johnson, threw 110 shutouts and won 417 games. On September 17, 1920, John Reggie Bogart of Stanley, Geneva, New York, made his professional debut with the Detroit Tigers. Bogart's teammate and manager was the famous Ty Cobb. On April 18, 1922, the Lehigh Valley Railroad team from Manchester, New York took the train to New York City and played the Brooklyn Bushwicks. The Bushwicks' first baseman that day was Lou Gehrig. Beat Johnny Boardman of Manchester, New York. On October 18, 1923, he played catcher against the great Babe Ruth in Hornell, New York. Irish Joe Shannon of Stanley, New York, snags the ball in the 1930s. The Stanley team was sponsored by Seagram's Whiskey, who provided uniforms and drink, because Father Leo Hastings, a Catholic priest in Stanley, had a brother that was a Seagram's executive. Town of Manchester professional players, 1870s, Sam Jackson, Big Leagues, Boston Red Sox. 1940s, Ike Moses, St. Louis Cardinals, Dwayne Coots, St. Louis Cardinals. 1950s, Bill O'Donnell, San Francisco Giants, Dan O'Donnell, Baltimore Orioles, Whitey Williams, Brooklyn Dodgers. 1960, Jim Bowen and Dougie Walters, San Francisco Giants. 1960, all-time Major League hits leader Pete Rose, top left, and the Hall of Famer Tony Perez, third row, second from the right, began their professional career in Geneva, New York. In 1972, McDonough Park, Geneva, New York, Bernice Guerra became the first woman to umpire a professional baseball game. Hope you enjoyed some baseball history that took place in Ontario County. Sincerely, Tim Munn.
There's a lot of neat stories and a lot of different people. I can believe it, after I was done with that, I actually missed Johnny Vandermeer, the only man to pitch back-to-back no-hitters. Played for the Sampson Naval Base and also played at McDonough Park in Geneva. But there's a lot of stories. You can elaborate on those, like the Bernice Guerra is quite a story when she first came here and broke into umpiring and that, and the threats that she went through. You can go on and on about some of those stories. Before I get to Victor baseball history, I'm going to do why don't you just bring it up here? Yeah. All right, I'm going to pull tickets here. I got 6 books I'm going to give away here. Here's the first ticket. See, I got to flip my glasses up too as well. 5058. Oh, 577. Name on the back is Babette. Right there. Yeah, I'll do that. Go ahead. So fix is in. How do I know that? So, Victor Historian. There, we got to get her one. Very good. Well, I got one. Dennis O'Day. Hey, Kohovic, just spoke to your son the other day on the phone. Yep. Eddie's son is the head coach at Holy Cross. The Victor, when he reminded me, we did a generational thing. You forgot about J.J. Vanderstein, whose mom, Julie, is also from the Carroll Tree as well. It's interesting. Like I said, it's not as sports takes you to the genealogy. It's great. Dennis Kelly. Dave W. The last one I have here, Larry Keefe. I would have picked Dave Condon a book out, but we went to a birthday party up at his farm when I was a little kid, and by the way, his mother was a terrific cook. I'll tell you that. But that day we kind of explored, jumping up in the hay and the mound, and then I drank a lot of beverage that day, and went near the wire where the cows were, and Dave, well, anyways, I didn't know where I went to the bathroom, hit the wire, next thing I got a heck of a shock, and that's probably why Dave didn't get a book today. The one story, and I don't want to keep going on this, like I said, I go on and on. When I did the research on Roy Wilkinson from Canandaigua, he was like one of the most tragic figures that I ever researched. Here's a young man, Canandaigua. His father's the gardener for Mary Clark Thompson. He actually has a house on Gibson Street. Young Wilkinson is afflicted with polio, so his dad, early on, his walking, his gait wasn't very good. Dad made a stool. He went on that stool, of course, the stories from the family journal or from other stories that passed down, and he would throw a ball at the barn door over and over again. And obviously, he developed a pretty good arm. He also grew to be about 6'2", but they always called him the lanky pitcher, kind of on the thin side. But anyways, he went on, and he was like a journeyman in the pros, and he came up through the minor league ranks. And I kind of looked up the news articles and tracked his career for, where he's drafted from, first Cleveland and then or Philadelphia and so forth. Finally, you just imagine, it's his big chance in life to hit it big, and he goes. Chicago needed extra pitching help, so Chicago White Sox take him in 1919 later in the season on a trade. Well, as you know, you've seen the movie 8 Man Out, and there's also probably read the story or familiar with it if you're into baseball, that they're on the take, and that's why she was Joe Jackson's not in the Hall of Fame. But Roy Wilkinson ended up pitching 2 games in the 1919 World Series because Eddie Seacott was one of the pitchers that threw the game, and so he went in and did mop-up duty. And, you think about it, here's this guy's big chance in life, and he's shrouded by this cloud of controversy. And so he comes back, and this happened back in the day, and we're talking, 1919. A lot of times the big-time players came back to their hometown, and they actually pitched, and as he did, he pitched for the Canandaigua Devil Dogs against the Manchester Railroaders, and sadly, he was beaten. And what I didn't like about looking up the old headlines newspaper, Linky Sox Twitter goes wrong and whatever, and it's almost like the cloud had followed him, the controversy. And then I went through the box score, and I noticed the guy struck out like 14, but there were like 5 errors on his fielders like that. Well, he was basically literally they ran him out of town, and just the negative headlines alone was he didn't really come back to Canandaigua after that. Plus, he was also involved in a very, and it made front page news. I couldn't believe it because that's the Black Sox news. So he was in a very bitter divorce case, and his wife was a big socialite up in Rochester, and that was well publicized. And I don't know why it was, but it was because it was association probably with the Black Sox. Later on in life, I had a chance. I met his great-grandson, Jeff Flowerday, who actually works at RAT, and he brought up some neat stuff. I had a bunch of neat photos that I copied, reproduced when he actually did spring training in Cuba and his early uniform, and he actually had a baseball card and stuff. And then Jeff told me how he was kind of like, excluded from the family because of his association. Probably also the divorce wasn't helpful either. It was kind of sad at the end. I tried to track. He ended up pitching 20 years. Of course, most of those were minor league teams in Louisville and places like that, Toledo, Louisville, so forth. But he ended up, his death certificate, his last known residence was a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. And I tried like the Dickens to find his burial ground, one of those things that, I called up everybody, contacted the other historians down there, could never find it. I was hoping to get that piece of the puzzle for the family, but, it was really quite a tragic story. And he'd come so far from polio to the Major Leagues World Series, and then kind of ended up on the dark side of baseball history. So the next one is Victor Baseball History. the truth about Victor baseball history, and I'll probably push this out and on my face here soon, but Victor baseball history probably in the last 30 years has been one of the better high school programs in the state. And Sean Rucker from East Rochester, I can't say enough about him because let's be honest, this is a hotbed for lacrosse. And they do. They have a lot of athletes that go on to Division I lacrosse. But every year he has teams that win sectional. It's amazing. The man's won 3 state titles, and that's quite a record. And they've had some. Matter of fact, my son had on his team last year, the summer collegiate team. We had 2 Victor kids, an outstanding pitcher and a shortstop. And these kids can play ball up here in this area because most people now equate. I had a friend actually, his son was with the minor leagues with the Boston Red Sox, got up to AAA ball, Pawtucket for a while, and they're in a new city now. But he said it's tough because they sign these younger players out of Dominican Republic who are 17, and they're the big bonus babies. And this young man came out of Longwood College out of Virginia. It was Division I, but he says it's tough to really get to, he got up to AAA. But that's just the thing. The road to the top is so tough. And most of your players, unless they're pitchers, usually your position players are from down south. There's no secret to that. Florida, you can play baseball. California, Texas, you can play year-round. But I was pretty impressed with the Victor baseball history, and I'm glad Dennis came today, Dennis O'Day. He actually helped me identify somebody in a picture because I had seen Bill O'Day's name in there, and it's associated with, if you go over there at the end, you look at things, I actually have a Ken O'Day autograph photograph, who was Bill O'Day's brother, who played in the 44 World Series, which I'll mention in the thing. And, I like local history. Somebody said, well, I'm not Ken Burns. I didn't get the national whatever, the Babe Ruth, the Ty Cobbs, but I love to know who locally, what their mark was. Even if they weren't a professional player, what did they, the folklore, what did they do in the early days? And I hope I didn't race through this too hard because I was trying to do the lengthy frame by frame on this with it, because when I first did this, it took I had to get acclimated to it to get all the heading or the caption in. So I kind of go pretty fast. If anybody knew, my father is a math teacher here. He was called Mile a Minute Munn, and I did inherit some of his quick talking like that. But anyways, what I think is really important is about Victor baseball history, not necessarily the game, but you can, if you really want to dig back and look for genealogy, where you came from, some family things, or clues to things that people do. What did they? So actually, one actually talked about the different jobs they have and stuff like that. That's what interests me. Like that. So, Sue, I'm ready for this number 2.
Victor baseball history. 1870s to 1890s. June 2nd, 1875, Victor President H.E. Smith organizes a baseball team. The first game was played on Main Street. No windows were reported broken because the lemon peel ball was soft and squishy. 1877, Alden Colville's property, a block from Victor and Slater, is the first field. 1877 team, Simons, Upton, Morris, Snyder, Dillingham, Bacon, Jacobs, Kellogg, Norton, and Gall. Colville Field drew large crowds, and if spectators could not find a seat, they took to the trees. Early umpires stood off to the side. Victor's Dr. Meade was the local umpire. August 20th, 1884, a new school and baseball field was completed on the corner of West Main and School Street. 1898, Victor joins the YMCA League, which is sponsored by Mary Clark Thompson of Sonnenberg fame. 1900s. Many visiting teams use the trolley station located at Maple Avenue. 1907, Victor team, manager Case, Captain Collins in center field, Welt left field, Osborne first base, Karen second base, Evans shortstop, Moore third base, second move right field, serious pitcher, Lanny catcher. 1920s. 1921, the Douglas Giants take on Victor. The Giants were a barnstorming team founded by Charles Douglas, the son of famed abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Victor names who played against the Douglas Giants: Lefty Melville, Pearl Aldrich, Maltman, Swan, Kiesel. Victor hired West Russian native Boston Braves pitcher Al Mattern. Mattern pitched 5 seasons in the majors. 1920 ticket prices: men 35 cents, women 25 cents, boys under 16 25 cents. 1930s. The Jim Bush Coach Stubby Lauder story. Jim had missed the first 4 days of practice to help his father. It was Friday, and Jim, the shy freshman, showed up to watch practice from the backstop. Finally, Coach Lauder noticed Jim and decided to investigate. Stubby asked Jim if he could help him. Young Jim replied, "I know I'm late, but I would like to try out." Stubby told Jim, "If you want to be on the team, meet me at my farm Saturday at 7 a.m. Jim arrived by 7 a.m. Saturday. Coach Lauder threw him a pitchfork and left. Hour by hour went by, and no sign of Coach Lauder. Finally, at 7 p.m., Coach Stubby Lauder returned. When Coach Lauder arrived, Jim asked him if he wanted to see him throw or catch. Stubby replied, "Nope, anyone who can work 12 hours is good enough for my team." As Jim left, he asked Stubby what position might he play. Stubby replied, "He held the pitchfork like a lefty. First base, of course." 1931 State League champs: bottom, T. Berry, J. Egan, F. Widmer, H. Egan; middle, B. O'Shea, S. Ernest, C. Beckman, A. Berry; top, H. Dutton, F. Enan, J. Underwood, and F. Eisman. Opponents: Newark, Geneva, Manchester, East Rochester, Seneca Falls, Penn Yan, Pittsford, Lyons, Clyde, Waterloo. 1933 Victor High: bottom, J. Bush, C. Lyons, W. Heenan, W. Bunch, K. Brownell, A. Sale; middle, R. Heenan, Principal Payne, T. Thursday, Coach Lauder, H. Berry; top, C. Edward, P. Fisher, J. Wilcox, R. Garling. Preston Fisher is Victor's first college star. In 1936, he defeats Ohio State 1-0. 1937, House of David, famous barnstorming team, comes to Victor. Hall of Famers Satchel Paige, left, Grover Cleveland, Alexander Wright played on the House of David. 1937 Victor Insider, seated D. Carra, bottom, P. Fisher, R. Garling, J. Murphy, J. Bush, E. Brown, K. Brownell; top, D. Break, A. Carra, D. Canan, B. Mann, B. Murphy, D. Camisel, C. Sadler, and B. Ryan. 1940s. A new school, a new field, and the school's first sectional title. The legendary pitcher Bernard Ryan starred in the 1940s. 1943, Coach Brown, J. Tisher, B. Mangiamelli, N. Crane, J. McCarthy. Center, R. Edwards, B. Blyer, B. Theo, P. Zumble, J. Carra, B. Crowley. Back, D. Sharp, D. Bush, A. Heenan, J. Anderson, F. Mara. Missing, D. Carra. Lest we forget, above is one of the last photos of Richard Bush, who made the supreme sacrifice in Anzio, Italy. Below is Gerald Heenan, who was killed in France during World War II. Final resting spot for Richard Bush. It took up to 6 years to return bodies to the U.S. Below, Gerald Heenan is buried in Lorraine, France. Ken O'Day, little brother of Victor's Bill O'Day, earned a World Series ring with the Cardinals in 1944. He played 15 years of professional ball. The mid-50s, twin brothers Don and Darvin Pegler were recruited by the Canada Lakers to play semi-pro ball. 1959, coaches Pete Zumble, Bob Crowley, and Cy Calkins coached Victor's only Little League team. 1960s. The housing boom. Victor goes from 1 youth baseball team to 12 teams. 1964 Legion champs. Bottom, P. Longyear, T. Zumble, D. Clover, G. Sampson. Middle, R. Prizel, G. C. Carvey, D. Crowley, F. Pesmeni, T. Farrington, S. Zumble. Top, D. Phillips, J. Dayton, J. Goldfarb, J. Sampson, J. Pike, and D. Skota. Pitcher Jim Sampson averaged 14 strikeouts per game in his senior year in 1964. 1967 Class A runner-ups. Kneeling, G. Hand, B. Exton, D. Hand, A. Acree, S. Zumble, B. Bauman. Standing, T. Bauman, P. Coker, F. Zine, S. Olney, Coach Canale, G. Sampson, N. Fisher, D. Crowley, and T. Skota. Legendary Sandlot player Coach Dale Dipper Bardoon, big brother-like figure who taught many of us the game of baseball. Al Antonelli, Victor guidance counselor from the 60s to 80s, signed a $36,000 contract with the Boston Red Sox in the 50s. 1970s. 1970, Benjamin Carr is the first African-American baseball player in Victor school history. 1978, Section 5 Class A champs, third baseman Jerry Vanderstein tags out the runner. Jim Zumble, Scott Zahn, Mike Bowl, Jerry Vanderstein earned all-star honors. Victor pitcher Bullet Bob Hanley is the first pitcher to throw 90 miles an hour. 1990s to present. East Rochester native Sean Rucker is hired as coach. He has produced 3 state titles to date, 2004, 11, and 2014. Paul Nardozzi became the area's top pitcher, propelling Victor to one of the top programs in the state. His success will earn him a scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh. Following his career at Pitt, he would sign a pro contract with the Detroit Tigers. First state title team, 2004. Kneeling, J. Vanderstein, J. Solstice, J. Zobel, B. and Leonard, A. Voice. Standing, Coach Rucker, E. Warner, A. Stewart, N. Krajic, D. Henderson, G. Schwab, G. Castor, E. Graham, S. Marin, E. Kolovic, P. O'Born, N. Kazano, and Coach Mandile. Above, former 2004 state champion Ed Kolovic is Holy Cross University head coach. Below, fellow teammate Sean Marin is head coach at Finger Lakes Community College. 3 generations, 1944 sectional champs Joe and Don Carroll were uncles to 1978 sectional champion Mike Bowe, who is uncle to 2004 sectional champion Ed Kolovic. D1 players from Victor, Preston Fitchell, All Wrestling, Tim Peck Davis, and Paul Nardozzi, Pittsburgh, Pete Carrier, Wofford, Nick Conliffe, St. Bonaventure, Nate Kutcher, Richmond, Matt Portland, Northwestern, Santino Rossi, Hofstra, Tommy Wagner, Cornell, Dale Wickham, Cornell, Carter Fick, Niagara, and Cooper Loyal, Albany. Nearly a century and a half later, the tradition continues. The end.
Yeah, I wonder who that guy is. I've been on a few pounds since. Yeah. Just a couple things before I let you get up and head out today. I do appreciate you coming. When I did the thing I really enjoy, I'm kind of been a people person since I've been I was always an elementary school teacher, and I enjoyed it very much. And Ann's here today, Ann Aldrich, my colleague from Red Jacket, whose father was Jim Bush. Mr. Bush to me growing up was always the IGA man. He had this red smock, this very distinguished gentleman, about 6'1" or 2", never fat, always like in shape, wire-rimmed glasses. By the way, Andy, I'm sorry, when I used to go to the IGA, he had this thing about putting my thumb in the Philadelphia cream cheese all the time. Yeah, I was the one. But anyways, what a privilege it was to sit down and talk to him. And it was in his later years. I think he passed on just a few years after when I wrote the book. To sit down and hear about all the baseball history. And I didn't realize some of the people that, everyday life you walk across. Like when I worked at the Victor Insulator, one of the foremen was Reggie Edwards. He's on the 43 baseball team. Of course, I had Jack McCarthy's a Little League coach, and he was in one of the photos there. The Zumbles and that. But anyways, when I sat down with Mr. Bush, and it was a great afternoon. I do cherish those, not because Ann's here. When they have those opportunities to sit down and you hear about the history firsthand, people experience it. It was quite a thing. And I know when you start talking to somebody, there's got to be a respect to the point how much did they want to divulge or that. And I knew one of the things was being Veterans Day. It was tough that I never knew that your uncle died in the war. and your dad was there. I don't think it was one where there was survivor's guilt, but I think when he sat down and talked to me, he said, why me and why him, or something like that. And that's where you got to respect somebody when they're going to divulge that this is pretty personal stuff. And I did put it in the book, and that's why today, this timing is pretty good, Veterans Day. You see this picture, and, you know, I guess you're older, you get a little more sentimental, and I've always been that kind of, you know, kind of like my father. I'm a very emotional person. I like that, but you know, it's the kind of the fire in me, the coach in me, and also the teacher who wants to propel the kid to do well. But he sat there, and I saw it in his eyes. It's so tough. He says, you know, Tim, I was an officer, and I was stationed in Hawaii. My brother was this young kid, but you see the picture. You see him in his high school picture. That's one of those last pictures that's taken of him. And he goes off to war, and he gets killed in the battle in Anzio, like that. And, you know, I know we can't make that case with kids this day and age, but to think about, you know, when I don't want to get into the controversy part of it, but kneeling for the flag or standing up, or, you know, when you hear the song break out like that. But when he mentioned that to me, it was pretty powerful, and that I can't thank him enough for expressing that to me about his brother, and that's why I didn't want him to be forgotten. Now, one thing, and then I don't know if this is true, and he told me, and I never knew this about the State Department. Obviously, the Henan gentleman was buried in France, but they had an option, they could come back, but the problem was, I guess they did not bring the bodies back right away. And your dad was adamant, I should say your mother, was your grandmother? Your grandmother was adamant that my boy is coming back home to his final resting spot. And those are the little things that you treasure when you go and you do a book on somebody, you learn the history about that community. And that was a very powerful, it wasn't anything about baseball and that, but it was just about the connection there, the human element involved. And when he felt comfortable enough to say that to me, and I could just see there was like a release when he said that. And then good for your mom that he came back. It took some time, and I never realized, obviously, it's a tall order task to bring somebody home when they go, you know, the fields and identify them and bring them back, but that they did bring his body back. And, you know, being Veterans Day, you know, I'm glad I could at least mention his name today and that. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Amazing. And, you know, you think about it, I get a little emotional about this. And I was only a little kid. You know, I'm like in third or fourth grade and in Vietnam War. And Mrs. Wood was our nurse. And one day, you go by, you don't think about it. You know, Tischer's to me was a funeral home, but it's a white porch in the front. You don't think about it. And then one day, and Mrs. Wood, not that, you know, I'm not saying she was a jovial person or something like that, but I just saw the tears in her eye one day, and I didn't equate it already, because I had to go home to Dad. I says, Dad, what's going on? Of course, the school newsletter or the faculty had a thing that went around. He said, well, your school nurse, Mrs. Wood's son, was killed in Vietnam. That's his body's come home like that. And then it always had that stereotype the rest of my life going by, thinking of the young Wood kid, and Vietnam War, you know, and Tischer's funeral home. They had that association with it. On more of the happy side of things, I did not have a lengthy baseball career. I wasn't a bad player. I fell in love watching the Olympics one day, the shot put and discus, and I ended up pursuing mostly the discus and also the shot put, I should say. I ended up at one point had both school records for Victor. And in some sense, I still have the school records, because my kids who I coach have the school records at Victor right now. Christian Johnson's the last one. I coach kids all over Section 5 and that. But this is a day in the life of Tim Munn in 1973, after coming home from junior high baseball practice in 8th grade. Steve Zumbel's my coach. Of course, Zumbel's names are synonymous with baseball history around here. And I'd come home, and I enjoyed it. I walked home from practice. Now, if you rode your bike, you went down the tar path, and some guys didn't make it down the tar path, you know, like that. And it's gone now, and it's not even there. So I came, and I can tell stories and that. But we always liked there's a little trail alongside the fence that would come down, and, you know, I don't know, I guess I'd do a little exploring, come out near, there was a barn near High Street there, or come out near Mrs. Bell's backyard. And if you walked on her, probably yelled at usually, something like that. But I always stopped in, because I knew, I think it, I get mixed up. Dan and Dave. I think Dave was the father and Dave was the father. Yeah, the guy owned the dairy, right? Yep, and he was a former catcher, and his son went on to be a catcher. But he had to go to Victor Dairy after baseball practice, even though it was before dinner, because I know on certain days they sold like day-old donuts for like a nickel, and you always got a quart of chocolate milk for 25 cents, and a number of Mr. Canan's baseball stories. And he had a lot of them, too. So we'd go in there after practice, a bunch of us, and we'd get our donuts and our chocolate milk, and then, of course, on your way, heading down, it used to be down close to this area. Al Pesmeni had a barbershop. Of course, Al, he loves his Italian ancestry there. And so his barbershop was always full of Yogi Berra, Joe DiMaggio stuff. And he just talked about the Yanks. And I swear to God, Al picked up that New York City accent there, his thick tongue like that, But anyways, he'd always talk about baseball with us as well. And as I went by the way, and Steve Zumbo had to remind me because I forgot. Good God, some of my early baseball cards I bought was Hodges Grocery Store. We went in there for our fudgesicles, our popsicles, our jawbreakers, and our baseball cards like that. Another thing you realize when we grew up in a different generation is that, and I was a catcher for a while. Scott Zano's much better than me. It's probably better that I retired from it. But anyways, when my webbing, my glove was broken, we didn't go off and buy a new glove. We went down to Frank's shoe store, and Frank did it, you got it fixed up again. It's playable. There you go. And I had to say this because we're close to the store. The Little League days are fond memories. My dad passed about 3 years ago. He was in his 90s. Had a pretty long and happy life in that. And one of the things Dad was always involved with in sports. Of course, Dad was a longtime basketball coach and teacher here at Victor. We always, after the Little League game, had to stop in and see Clem Berry and Tony Catalano. They called him Big Cat. And Big Cat is one of those guys. If he's behind the backstop and you're a poor umpire, you heard it like that. But we'd go in. The big thing that I really savored that was after a hot July day, catching behind the plate. And of course, Dennis over here was a catcher in Little League 2 and Pal League and that. You're sweaty, you're dusty and that. And I think it was only a dime, but there were only 6 fluid ounce bottles, the old Coca-Cola bottles. You just go and throw your dime in, pull it out. Oh, you savored every drop, and then you put the cold bottle on the back of your head and just, like that. It's just so wonderful. And Clem always asks you, how'd your day go? How'd you play in the game? And so did Tony Cat. He always telling you stuff like that. When Tony did die, I think Tony did die of a heart attack up at the field or something like that. But you missed him because he was always, any kid that went into the station, he always asked about, hey, you ball player? How you doing? Stuff like that. That's part of growing up. Anyways, moving up the hill, because I lived up on the hill there. Went up Church Street, and you had to take those day-old donuts and that quart of chocolate milk, and you had to turn on Andrew Street. And then what you did is you hopped up on the wall on Andrew Street. You spent time there. Sorry, Mom, I was late for dinner a few times. Like that. And you finished them off like that. Of course, you're right down by Vera Brown's house, who taught school for 53 years. And one story leads into another. We used to go to Vera Brown's house for Halloween. She gave you multiple big chocolate bars, like that. And then of course, you found out that she taught school forever and so forth. But as I continue on, continue my path on, I head up to Clover Lane. And I was telling Dennis here, the Clover Lane gang, we had a bunch of Sandlot. It's kind of a sad thing, end of an era, because I know today's kids are pretty much Xbox or inside in front of the TV, and they work their fingers pretty good. And I'm sure a lot of you, and there's people that are older than I am, that we're always outdoors playing Sandlot, playing something, even if it was climbing a tree or forts or like that. But the Bardoons, the Zons, the Moores, I'm trying to think, Sid Jones, Soupy Campbell, they had some nicknames there, Turkey Jones. They played the corner of Winston and Clover Lane was third base. I was telling Dennis this. I remember my family, Mom and Dad always went and visit relatives down in Geneseo or Danville. When we came back after a long trip, we'd turn on the Clover Lane there, and geez, there's 3 cars waiting in the road. What's the holdup? Well, they're playing a game, third base is in the middle of the road, and you're not going to get by until the inning is over. You know, that's it. But those guys were all good ball players, all the Bardoons and Dale, and God rest his soul, died tragically. I had coached his son in high school basketball, and that Dale took us under his wing as one of the older kids in the neighborhood, and we had this one lady used to get mad. Yeah, Jeff Tyler could crank a ball, and I think he broke Gerlach's window 2 or 3 times. So Dale says, look, we're going to all learn how to switch hit. We're going to send the ball towards Judge Dwyer's house now, you know, like that. So, and that's what we did, you know. But it was great growing up in an era where, you know, as I told Dennis here, you left your gloves outside on the field, and when it was over, it was usually mom's lunch call or dinner call, and that was it, and they were there till the next day. You know, it was a great time to grow up in a community, and you know, and that was part of my Sandlot team. We weren't as good. We had Jeff Tyler, who was, I think, one of the top players, but we were called the Salem Circle Sluggers, and they had groups. Parkway had a team with the Bowermans, the Dorshides, and the Johnstons. And then the Biglers and Dibbles and something were up on Lionel Road. So I didn't want to keep this going. As we wrap this up here, if you want to take a look at some of the stuff over there, kind of neat stuff, you'll see Al Mattern's tobacco card, who Victor hired that day to beat the Douglas Giants. Ken O'Day's autograph pictures there as well. I have a bunch of, I like collecting antiques, and I have a bunch of, this is going to be my last story because I'm going to keep going here because somebody's probably wondering, I don't know when the bills come on, I'm picking that, you know, like that. But I collect catcher's mask, and I now have about 25 home that go from about 1880 up through present day and some extras. And so I went down to Cooperstown. We thought we were going to get in there for a show with my buddy Rand Darrell. We'd made all these cutouts. We did a bunch of shows in Ontario County, and we met with I can't remember his name, Tim Wiles or something like that, was the head of the archivist or whatever he was down there. We thought we were going to get a little, because my biggest thing with my baseball book, according to Dr. Pierce that likes, is I do a lot on industrial league baseball, small town baseball. And so I was hunting around for the first ones came out were called birdcage, but later on we called, spider web mask. Spider mask, I have one in the middle you can see. So I offered this guy, my wife would have shot me, but I offered this guy $2,000 for a catcher's mask, and they go pretty good. Anywhere from $365 up to a couple grand now, and he would not sell it. So about 3 months later, it's summer vacation, and we go to little Woodstock, Vermont, picture perfect postcard town, and the Kishi Gorge Falls is right nearby with the Antique Emporium. Of course, I was mentioning somebody here, antiques up in the Northeast are a lot older. We have some luck. So I'm going through, and finally I spotted the Holy Grail. I see the spider mask like that, and I saw the price. It was like $200 and some, something like that. And I pick it up. I'm going to buy it. My mother-in-law comes up next to me. You're going to buy that for that price? We got old catcher stuff in the garage you can have for free. And I did not pick it up for a while until later on all that stuff was done. Like somebody says, most stuff I find is usually garage sales, estate sales. Word of mouth. Somebody finds out you collect stuff and you want to organize it or whatever. You're kind of like a private curator of it, and then of course online. But that's it. It's been enjoyable. I've enjoyed the nice little hobby and the history of it, and I hope to get more involved. I've done 7 books to date. Something that keeps my time busy, and I have to thank Miss Shantz for that. By the way, I was a terrible English student. Miss Shantz saw me. She said, there's a bright light there. You got some good stuff. But I had Mrs. Addington back in 7th, 8th grade, I think, whatever. I think I only got a 45 on marking periods. So it's kind of good that the dumb jock became an author, like that. But that's it. I first of all, I want to again thank you for coming out today on your Sunday. I'm glad the sun's shining. Pretty soon it'll be snow, we know that. But I want to thank you for coming out. And if you ever need anything, just give me a holler. All right. Thank you for coming. Yeah.